Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's roundtable discussion all about bringing the wow factor back to the in-flight experience. I'm Stephanie Philp, editor of PAX International magazine, and I'm thrilled to be joined today by such an experienced industry panel. As we ramp up to return to Hamburg this June, PAX and WTCE have joined together to produce this all-star panel that represents many different sides of what it really takes to make a passenger feel like their onboard experience is unmatched. With us today, we have Hauw, the founder of In-Air Travel Experience, which is a boutique customer experience advisory and innovation accelerator for air travel. We have Chef Wheaton, who was named Vice President of Culinary at Cuisine Solutions in 2020, where he currently heads operations. Joining us as well today, I'm happy to introduce Marisa Pitsch, the Chief Customer Experience Officer at FORMIA, who aims to drive the human-centered approach and experience-led thinking at the heart of FORMIA's customer experience strategy. And finally, we welcome Kelly Stevenson, whose career at British Airways spanned almost 21 years across marketing, commercial, operations, and catering. She launched JetVine Consultancy Company in March of 2020. Thank you again to everyone for being here today. I know we're all calling in from different time zones, so let's get started. And I'm going to throw the first question to you. Why do you think air travel is seen as the most luxurious way of traveling?
Hi, Stephanie. Hi, everyone. Well, I think air travel is the only way to get anywhere in the world in, let's say, 24 hours. Historically, air travel was a luxurious way of traveling for the happy few. Thankfully, it has been democratized and become accessible to many. However, flying still has some magic to it, right? I mean, the excitement of flying itself, discovering innovative aircraft, the accelerated choice of different types of classes, like from business aviation to first class, business class, premium economy, economy class, and low-cost carriers. So there's a really wide range of opportunities, and then also improved safety, right? So I think all these elements really make travel still the most luxurious way of traveling.
Yeah, thank you for that. Marisa, can you jump in here? Why do you think air travel is seen as the most luxurious?
I'm sure it has a different meaning for different people, right? But just listening to Anne's, first of all, thanks for having me. I jumped right in there like you instructed me to without saying good morning and good evening, good afternoon to the rest of the panelists and to yourself, Stephanie. So thank you for inviting FORMIA to be a part of that and inviting myself to be a part of the discussion. Very, very passionate about this topic. I mean, it's in my title. So yes, and I'm super excited to be talking about, you know, the wow factor again in flying, because I think we've all had it, right? We all had it with a number of years that we had to shelve that aspect of travel. And so, and boy, are we back, aren't we? So I think that, as I was saying, luxury has, you know, different meanings for different people, but at the same time, fundamentally, it's about getting from point A to point B, you know, in the fastest time possible, and in the most convenient way possible. And so I would say speed and convenience, and of course, you know, if you look at what Anne has just pointed out in terms of all of the different modes of travel and all the different cabins, just think about how many touch points, you know, customer touch points that offers up for people like us to innovate and to think about the different ways in which we can at that implement, you know, wow factors in the experience.
Yes. Kelly, I'm wondering, in your view, how has the perception of air travel changed in the past 3 years?
Yeah, so I think there's been a big shift in the perception of air travel from two perspectives. One, the actual experience of getting to the airport and traveling. I've spoken to a number of airlines, certainly the lounges team, who have said that people are dwelling for much longer in that lounge environment before taking the plane, because there's some concern about how long it takes to get through security and immigration. There's some concern about, you know, will there be any surprises at check-in with COVID regulations? And so therefore there's that dwell for that experience before you even get on the plane that is really having a mark on the experience. And therefore people are creating experiences within the lounge that maybe are a bit more entertaining, a bit more theatrical than previously. But I think in flight, you've got this shift to more exploration in terms of what products are existing for the customers, especially actually down the more entry-level economy end of most airlines. So what's happened specifically just before COVID, but certainly much more growth in the last 3 years since COVID, is the move to the buy on board style model. So where customers are given the choice to pay for food and beverages in flight, and therefore they expect maybe some more choice. There is an expectation that if there's food offering on board, that there are some vegan alternatives, there are some gluten-free, because there's no opportunity to book the special meals anymore. However, saying that, the other end of the aircraft, when you're looking to the business travel cabin or the first cabins amongst some airlines, there's this expectation that, well, if I can't buy it, it should all be available. And therefore that experience has had to be enhanced as well. So I think we're in a very different playing field now to pre-2020. And there's a lot more people in the market and in the space, and a lot more people are looking to both global travel retail as well as in-flight free consumption that they're selling towards. And I think that that space is growing, which is great for suppliers and it's great for consumers. But I think the airlines are sort of wondering where they should be and where their positioning is, which is making the in-flight experience, and relying hopefully on supporters for aviation like ourselves, is hopefully helping to create that experience. But I think it's really, to answer your question wholly, the customer experience has shifted in much bigger a way since 2020 than we've seen over the last 2 decades.
Yeah, of course. I mean, how could it not have? Everything has been completely uprooted, right, in the last few years. Sean, I feel like this is a great point for you to jump in here. Do you think that, or how do you think that what wows passengers in flight has changed in the past few years?
Well, I think Kelly made a couple of very good points, and points that I wanted to bring up as we went through the discussion as well, in that multiple choices, both in the buy on board segment and in the premium cabins, where people want choices, people expect choices, whether it's buy on board in economy cabins or in the premium cabins. You know, a friend of mine was telling me he was on a flight back from Tokyo last week, got upgraded at kind of the last minute, and almost immediately got an email asking him what meal choices he wanted. He had 5 things to choose from once he got to the premium cabin, including some vegan and gluten-free options. And we're certainly seeing a lot of ask for those things, for more options, for more premium selections in the premium cabin, but also things that we can offer in buy on board. But it is about the whole experience, not just on board, right? So even in the lounges where people are hanging out and having an experience, the airlines want to have that premium experience throughout the whole 24 hours of travel that somebody might be undertaking.
Yeah.
Really,
and do you find
to be part of the industry and see where it's going and where it's going to land?
Do you find that giving passengers that opportunity of choice is really valuable?
I think that's kind of across the hospitality industry. People want and expect choices, whether it's in a hotel or on an airplane. People want to know that they have the opportunity to customize what they're going to eat. And it can be small things. It can be the difference between a gluten-free bun and a regular sesame bun for a sandwich, right? People just want to know that their dietary needs are being thought about, and that there's not a one-size-fits-all approach, no matter what goes in the cabin or in the lounge.
For sure. Certainly that level of personalization can make the travel experience so much more individualized, right? Make you feel on board. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on how the perception of air travel has been changing.
Well, I think the air travel industry has undergone and is still undergoing a massive transformation, because various societal shifts impact the way we think about hospitality. And to Sean's point before, because actually I was doubting to jump in or not, but I think today's passengers take great design and amenities as a given. So what they are looking for instead is something that is original, that is meaningful, that delights them, that broadens their horizon and opens their mind. And so choice and personalization are the answer to that.
Marisa, maybe, I'd love to invite you in now.
No, absolutely. And I think this is across, just looking at the various fields here, there is this synchronism. I mean, even with amenities, but you can see some of the background there, and there's such a huge variety and across the cabins as well in terms of what the ask is. But what we see here is kind of the shift. That shift is like the swing of the pendulum towards passengers now allowing them to make a little bit more of the rules than whereas before it might have been that when you fly, it's all about the regulations and adhering to the safety regulations, and then the hygiene regulations, and then just being told when to eat and when is sleep time and when you're supposed to wake up. But now this whole personalization aspect is a huge discussion for us as well in the amenity space, and how we move towards allowing the passenger to decide a little bit about what they want in their amenities, particularly for medium to long haul flights, instead of saying you must have a lip balm and a lotion. Not everybody wants that. You might want something different than I want, and so that's really kind of the innovative space that we're moving into at the moment, is to figure out collaboratively with our airline customers and with our brand partners how we come up with types of offerings that allow Mr. John Smith to feel like his needs and his own personal desires are being met on board, and that could be very different than what the person next to him wants.
Absolutely. What would personalization look like in an amenity kit field? Could you see it being sort of like choosing your meal where you can add and subtract different parts, or what do you think could be possible?
There are numerous possibilities there. I mean, I think that, you could play a lot within the lounge space in terms of having the passenger be able to choose and select certain, skincare products that they want, that they see fit for themselves on board. Or certainly not everybody wants slippers or socks. Some people don't want eye masks. So it's about maybe giving the choice a little bit before you board that aircraft, whether that is digitally, being just like you can select your seat and your meal now, or else, yes, in the lounge space, where, a dedicated space for a branded experience, for example, depending on the brand partners we're working with, or else that can be even on board, in the premium cabins. I guess that could be in the form of selecting right then and there what it is that you would like, to fill that amenity kit, to fill the pouches.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. I haven't seen that before, of necessarily getting to choose exactly what's going to be in there. Or it could be an exciting frontier. Kelly, let's switch gears. Yes, that's right. Stay tuned. Let's switch gears a little bit. Kelly, I want to ask you this question, which is what do you think are currently some of the biggest detractors for passengers to air travel? And can you think of any ways to mitigate these when some of these are out of our control?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the biggest detractor is the huge success of things like this. So Zoom and Teams calls, coming out of a pandemic where, I mean, certainly here in the UK and parts of Europe where I work very closely with people, it's almost become the norm now that you can jump on a call rather than jumping on an aircraft. So speaking to a few of my colleagues recently, we've been talking about how you really create that energy and that necessity to travel, and that desire for face-to-face meetings. And I think, although that's become a detractor, I think now we're 3 years down the line since the sort of when COVID hit, and the video call became even more popular than it was previously. I think now we're coming out the other side, and people have got almost like Teams fatigue, and they're finding that actually the success from going and flying to see somebody, especially if it's long haul. So, with the time difference, if you're there in country, from the UK to Singapore or from the US over to China or whatever, if you're able to do that travel, the success of the business decisions that get made and the timeliness of those decisions is much more effective. So I think that's one way of succeeding against that detractor. I think the other thing is the reluctance to get delayed. People certainly here in Europe are finding that delays are more common, be that because of reduced resource or enhanced global factors or governmental factors like strikes, etc. There's just a belief that you almost won't be on time. And punctuality is one of the major factors of a successful business. So if your mode of transport isn't on time, I think that is distracting some people. So the overriding success is to ensure that people know that by being on that plane and getting to that destination, they're going to do more successful business. And that's not necessarily happening at the moment.
Mm-hmm. That sort of brings in this question of how important the airport experience is to passengers, right? And this can be an open question if anyone wants to weigh in. We've been hinting at how important lounges have been and how they're increasing in importance, but what does it mean to have a positive airport experience right now? Kelly, you were saying, you want to be on time, but I think we can all agree that that's not necessarily always going to be the regular. So what does that airport experience mean for passengers, and what can we do as an industry to intervene in that setting?
Well, I was going to jump in and say, like, yeah, I think there is across the board, whether it's a business travel or leisure travel, that there is an expectation that somewhere along your journey, there's a very good chance you're going to hit a delay, which brings us to the in-airport experience, whether it's in a lounge or a food court or whatever. I think there's a lot of opportunity in the airports to make a difference in how people feel about travel. I certainly have my favorite airports to fly through because they have more amenities and they have better food options. So I don't know how much, and I think this was one of the questions, was how much the airline can affect what an airport does, and how much we can affect what an airport does. And from my side, we do business with the caterers that run the food courts and whatnot at an airport, so we can help them come up with better options. We work with the chefs at the airlines and in the lounges to help them come up with better, more unique food options. But from an amenity side, where do you fit in on an airport experience, and how to make that something that when somebody gets stuck for 3, 4, 6 hours, how do they not get bored?
Stephanie, I'd like to jump in. So I think the airport experience is an integral part of the passenger journey, who does not necessarily disconnect airline from airport, right? From a passenger perspective. So the airline customer satisfaction may be impacted if the airport experience is not seamless. And that could be long waiting time, unclear indication of where to go to, unclean lavatories, overcrowded lounges, lost luggage, and so on and so on. So I think it really is key that airlines and airports collaborate. Well, not just airlines and airports, but also airport operators, airport service providers. But I think, frankly, it's a completely different topic that's worth a separate conversation.
Yeah, and that's such a good point in what you're saying, that passengers don't necessarily separate the airline from the airport experience. So let's shift back to being in flight. I'm wondering if each of you could share your opinion on what really makes a passenger say, wow, I'm so happy to be here. I'm in my seat. What's going to make this experience memorable for a passenger?
I can jump in first if you like, Stephanie. So when I was at British Airways, although I was office-based and looking after the beverage program, I interacted a lot with the cabin crew and the customers. And certainly the feedback almost always was related to the level of service they received from the cabin crew. And if something was a bit off on the day in terms of delays, or if there was perhaps not their first food option, or perhaps the expectation wasn't there on some of the drinks in the bar or anything like that, if the crew delivered a good service and if they felt like they were wanted and they were being accepted onto that plane at that time and given that really nice welcome and hello, Mr. Jones, and hello, what would you like today? And we can't offer you, if you explain in a well-mannered way that something isn't available, or we'll make up for that another time, sir, or whatever, it's that really is the crux of a good or a bad flight, I think.
And how do we ensure? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, absolutely. I could not agree more. I mean, both from being in the industry and as a passenger as well on the receiving end of that, you know, and in that respect, I don't think a whole lot has changed in terms of what makes a great experience on board. It's that sense of recognition of whatever kind of day I've had, whatever kind of environment I've come from. And within, you know, the premium cabins, there is room to do that. It's fairly small, it's an intimate setting. It's not hard to memorize, you know, the names, and, you know, you've got the tools for that anyway. And so it is about that sense of pampering and recognition and empathy. And those are the soft touches, right? And it is the soft touches like an amenity kit is, you know, that's a soft customer experience element on board that, and these are the ones that have to be so quickly adapted depending on, you know, changing market demand or changing financial realities. And so with that, training also, I think is so important and crucial. But at the end of the day, can you train, you know, those soft touches in terms of like crew dialogue, something, you know, so simple. And just how far does it go just to have that warm greeting, to be offered, you know, the newspaper that you know that you want to read, and to have that coffee, you know that you like to have in the morning, and it goes such a long way to creating that wow experience, I think.
I think that carries through no matter what cabin you're in, right? Hospitality is hospitality, and everybody appreciates it. And it can be the smallest touches. It can be an extra bag of pretzels. It can be, you know, an extra blanket to quiet the crying baby next door. It can be just whatever level of service the onboard team can provide. I think everyone in the cabin sees it and appreciates it. You know, hospitality and the choices that we were talking about earlier, and giving people a sense of personalization across the board, no matter what cabin they're in, goes a long way.
I agree too. I think the human experience prevails over anything else. And also the interaction with customers is the #1 KPI in hospitality. So to your point before, Kelly, if you don't get your amenities or food, or but you still have caring crew that is genuinely kind, you may still be an NPS promoter. However, the opposite is untrue.
So how can airlines ensure that this excellent human level of customer experience is being offered to their passengers?
Okay,
I think to the point.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I'll jump in. I think to the point Sean made, it's throughout the whole aircraft. It's, you know, whether you're in a first cabin or an economy cabin, hospitality, you know, it costs nothing to be kind and caring, as Anne was saying. But I think the overriding factor is, I think airlines, not all, but some airlines have kind of lost their way a bit because they've been through a really difficult period, and there's always difficult periods. There's always difficult cycles in aviation. And I think for me, if I was training cabin crew, recurrent or new, and pilots to that end, I think it's about reminding of those small touches that Sean was referring to. You know, it doesn't take much to offer another blanket or an extra bag of pretzels, or if they've ordered a tomato juice, then to offer a glass of water alongside it because they might be too scared to ask for 2 drinks. You know, it's that kind of, it's thinking about, well, kind of what does this customer need? What are their expectations? What would they get in a restaurant? You know, a restaurant would always offer water before another drink. And I think we've lost the way a little bit. Sometimes when I'm a passenger traveling, I feel one of the most magical things for me is if the captain or first officer walks through the cabin, only if there's time and if it's safety, you know, the safety it allows for it. But that can be the most magical thing, just to see a pilot's uniform and being able to have that human connection before he flies you potentially 16 hours around the earth, you know. So I think it's just reminding in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and I was going to say that I think the key is to cultivate a hospitality mindset across the airline organization. So really that starts from the recruitment. You're not recruiting for an operational job, you're recruiting for a hospitality job, right? So, and that goes well, of course, with very deep and intense training on the mindset, language, service skills, and service procedures. but also providing the flight attendants access to detailed information such as what type of menus, what's the origin of certain ingredients, the wines, really that educational piece is also important, because the more confident they feel about the different touch points across the journey and to transmit the airline brand they represent to the customer, the better the service will be that they provide.
And you're touching on a really important point here, I think, which is passengers are really interested in the story of where everything they're engaging with on board is coming from, whether that's, in terms of their personal choices or sustainability, where the vineyard is that the wine is coming from. I'm curious to hear your points of view, anyone on the panel, about how does the story of an ingredient or an amenity kit or a meal as a whole, how is that impacting the passenger experience these days?
From an amenity kit perspective, if I can jump in, I mean, we can't have a conversation now with an airline customer about storytelling, coming into play. And in what better way than through the partnerships that we have with our brands? I think that, the amenity kits that are branded, for lack of a better word, really do offer, both parties added perceived value. Actually, it's three parties. It's the brand itself, but it's also the passengers at the end of the day, and then the airline associated. And the opportunity for storytelling through the amenity kit is growing and growing. It used to be in the past where you would open an amenity kit and you would see a very small leaflet inside that would, tell the story of the brand. But, the real estate on that leaflet is extremely limited. Now we're moving towards QR codes, and QR codes, which you see more often than not, lead into the universe of the brand, right? So it connects that passenger with the story of the brand. And there the space is unlimited in terms of the brands being able to share campaigns or promotional offers or discounts, or really for the brands to target their message to that passenger, and talking about empowering the crew with knowledge of what products are on board. It goes way beyond just food and beverage, right? Like if we have a particular wellness brand for the skincare, each of the crew members should be able to speak sort of, eloquently about what those products are, what is the philosophy of the brand, and just even a few bullet points would go a really long way when you're introducing the amenity kit. And I think I would love to see a lot more of that on board. And we also get engaged, with our customers in terms of offering that sort of training where let's go through the few bullet points about what these products are doing for you, right before your sleep or right as you wake up and invigorate. It's just that added factor of again, that personalization and creating the wow moment.
Yeah, I was thinking about this when the question came up, Marisa, because you talked earlier about having a kind of a curated, branded experience in the amenity kit, and that's something that we've seen something of a return to on the food side, where 15, 20 years ago, having a celebrity chef curate a menu was a very popular thing. And we're seeing a return to that. 15, 20 years ago, we were working with Charlie Trotter out of Chicago to put meals on planes. And then next week, we have a trio of well-known chefs coming in to do a collaboration with an airline and an airline caterer to come up with some meals that they can put on planes. So we're seeing that curated experience and another opportunity for storytelling, another opportunity to tell not only the story of the ingredients, but the story of how the chef decided to come up with that meal. Requires training for that onboard staff. But to your point about the real estate on the little card that comes in the amenity kit, it's also another opportunity to tell the story of the chef in the onboard magazine, right? Have a more written word, have a deeper explanation, and have something for the onboard staff to point guests to. Like, here's my little bit of knowledge, but here's a deeper explanation there, and get the story out far and wide.
Absolutely, or on the IFE, and having programs on the chefs. I mean, I actually was, Sean, there are flying chefs out there, right? Yes. Why don't we have flying wellness ambassadors, for example? I know it's a stretch. I know, it's maybe the number of airlines that would go that far are limited, but who knows? Now the landscape has changed so much in just the last couple of years, so we could move in that direction. And wellness and sleep and feeling rested and arriving at your destination, feeling in a certain way, is the topic of the moment, right? Of every airline discussion for sure that we have, and it's the main criteria for what we think about in terms of innovation for our amenity kits. So wellness ambassadors on board.
Wellness ambassadors, absolutely. Long haul flights. If you're on a flight for 16, 17 hours, you need all the help you can get at the end of that.
Exactly.
And I think the longevity of a flight is really conscious in the consumer's mind because of what air travel represents. From something you said earlier, Stephanie, around sustainability, you're talking about storytelling and everything, which I absolutely agree with Marisa. We don't have any conversations with airlines unless there's a story to be told about some of the brands that I'm working with. But the second, well, maybe equal next important factor is their sustainability ethics, not just across the actual materials that are being used and where they're sourcing from, but the community, the full circle community give back. I know a few of my brands have been successful in being placed on board. Taste, sustainability, and brand story, they're the three key markers. Still price sensitivity out there, but it's really shifting.
In terms of your JetVine consultancy program or consultancy business, Kelly, I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to the beverage side of bringing Hauw, what passengers are experiencing on board in that capacity.
Yeah, so what JetVine does is it matches the most sort of aviation friendly brands with the airlines, or vice versa. Sometimes airlines will ask for more sustainable products, so I source them for them, or I work with clients that are looking at travel retail and in-air experiences for their products. So what I brief them on is exactly that, is if you want a product to go on an airline, you've got to think about what class you're positioning in, but then you've really got to be great taste, great brand in terms of storytelling. What are your sustainability ethics and what can you share in terms of what you're doing from a sustainability perspective? And then price, because the airline industry is still quite a price sensitive industry, and that needs to be consciously in the mind. You're not selling to a restaurant or a supermarket here, and that has to be conscious before you even go to the airline. So I think the Hauw experience comes through all of that, but consumers are telling the airlines they want something different. There's a huge shift, I think, in the US and Europe, maybe not so much in other regions, but a huge shift to non-alcoholic products. So rather than just a standard soft drink, people are looking to more complex non-alcoholic drinks that they can have in the air. Being an environment where you do get dehydrated, as Sean said, you could be on a very long flight, linking into to Marisa talking about wellness. Well, maybe alcohol isn't the right choice for some people. However, if it is, then people expect to see big Hauw cocktails now, and not just have the option of a gin and tonic and a Bloody Mary, and that's the limit of what they can offer in terms of mixed drinks. So I think it's just more expectation. So if airlines can offer an experience that offers more choice and that can offer similar to what they would get in a nice restaurant or a fun bar, then it's marrying that hospitality experience again.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like that speaks to the customization and individual experience that we've been talking about throughout this whole call. It also touches on the theme of innovation, which I feel like is really important right now, as of course we're still in recovery as an industry, but we're moving away from using that word and thinking more about, bringing the wow factor back, bringing innovation to the forefront. So I'm wondering if each of you could speak to innovation from your own point of view. What does innovation look like for you right now?
Okay, I'll go first. So I think innovation in air travel in our industry is dual. It's technological development and human engagement, and of course with sustainability as a given, that it's like a no-brainer, it has to be there. So I think digital passenger engagement will be key to improve customer experience, to personalize the in-flight service, but also to reduce waste, to save costs, and to explore new business models like pre-order or skip your meal. But equally, as I said before, I think the human experience is absolutely key and prevails over anything else in a flight. So I think we should really not forget that. And that's going to be the real big differentiator and innovator in our industry going forward, I think.
Kit perspective, kit perspective, I think it's a lot of the same, so the shifts, same shared subjects there, but it's about that personalization as well. How do we explore that? It's also about the different business models in terms of not just offering a sustainable kit, but also maybe exploring circularity models as well. What are happening to those kits that are not taken off the flight, and really looking into that a little bit more and seeing how we can work together with the various stakeholders, because it's not just the airline. At the end of the day, this does require much deeper collaboration with various stakeholders involved. But the potential is there, the demand is there from our customers, and we are, spent quite some time now, the past 2 years or so, looking at ways to implement such a model, working together with various stakeholders there. And I think innovation in terms of materials. So, sure, wheat straw, toothbrushes, craft paper bags. I think those are, like Anne, you say, just the expected now. So there's different levels now, different tiers of sustainability, but the price sensitivity is there, as Kelly mentioned, and we have to find that balance between inspiring our customers, and getting them to go more towards those wonderful fruit leathers that we see out there, Pinatex, apple leather, e-leather, and then also raising the bar a little bit between what's happening right now, which is just kind of the expected. And we also want to have an impact not just on the environmental sustainability aspect, but on the social as well, where we've seen some wonderful examples of that, like for example with the Delta Airlines amenity kits, that are flying on board at the moment. So really, I think in terms of kits, those are the innovation points for us.
Right, that's great. Sean, jump in here. What is innovation?
Innovation on the food and beverage side, I think to Anne's point, the digitalization, right? Giving people the choice ahead of time or in flight. We're seeing a lot of growth in the buy on board portion, which as another revenue generator for the airline, gives them a little bit more flexibility in that price sensitivity. They're passing that cost on, and customers, guests on board are asking for those options. So giving from my side and from Cuisine Solutions side, giving airlines choices that they can pass on, things that are complete meals that are easy to reheat in an airline oven, that they can keep on board and reuse for the next flight, that they're not just bring on board and then throw it away if it doesn't get used, or that they can bring on as many as are ordered if somebody's taking a moment to pre-order them. And I think people value that option to go on ahead of a flight and order something special, right? This is only available if you pre-order it. Gives them its own wow factor of, oh, I can order a burger if I log onto the app and order it ahead of time, and only 2 other people on this plane are going to get that burger, and I'm special. And then the airline is passing on that cost, is actually making money on it. So the innovation from the food and beverage side is giving people the expanded choices they want, whether it's food or liquor, a specialty cocktail. That they could have a bespoke cocktail from a famous mixologist somewhere that's only available if they pre-order it, or a meal that's a meal from a celebrity chef that's only available if they pre-order it. To just the basic amenities, the Christina Tosi cookies that are available on United now, a celebrity pastry chef, and her little snack on board. So I think innovation is about customization and is about giving the guest more choices at the end of the day across the board, whether it's seating choices or amenities or food and beverage. It's just empowering the guest is the.
Absolutely, it feels like a big theme of this call. It's
Yeah.
focusing on that human experience and giving that personalization and choice. Kelly, did you want to jump in here and add anything from your point of view in terms of innovation in the industry?
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of the points have already been mentioned here, but for me, the beverage industry, whether that's wines or multiple other categories, is in such an innovative growth phase as it is. For me, it really makes me smile when you see the airlines adopting that innovation, because airlines historically might be slower to innovate than an on-trade or off-trade environment. So seeing innovations that come on that are much better for the environment and for the customized customer experience are one of those reasons why in my role I get up in the morning. So for example, seeing Delta adopt Tip Top, so ready to drink cocktail, which means you're going to have the perfect serve every time, giving the cabin crew the tools to not have the complication of making up and mixing a cocktail in a potentially turbulent environment, or an environment where they haven't been trained or haven't had the time to be trained, or two cabin crew might have very different levels of training when it comes to preparing drinks and food. You've given them the tools to do that, so it's consistent every time. And we know from various studies that customers on board flights love consistency. They love it if their flight out to Geneva is exactly the same as their one back, and there isn't too much falling in between. So consistency, I think, it goes alongside innovation. Virgin Atlantic are now serving a still and sparkling wine in can. So when I talk about innovation within the drinks industry, we've got great formats that avoid wastage because they might be single serve, but avoid glass bottles. They exclude the need to load lots of different formats, like a glass bottle and a mixer can and ice, etc., and different garnishes, because they're all inbuilt into the one can or the one bottle. So I think by bringing all of that together, you've hit your sustainability in terms of success point. You've given the customer consistency, but now because of innovation at the back end in the beverage industry, those things are tasting great in those formats. So you can get a great Tuscan wine in a paper bottle. You can get an amazing cocktail, just as you would get here at the Savoy Hotel in London, in a can, straight out into the glass, done. And I think what is brilliant about the airlines is the ones that are starting to adopt that and take on those innovations that exist, and hope to see a lot more of it.
Yeah, that feels like a great concluding point here to end. So I want to thank everyone again for being here today on this panel. Some of the key themes that are coming through our conversation have been personalization, putting the passenger first, making that experience really memorable. And that could be in terms of transparency, of sustainability. What's the story of what a passenger is eating or what they're experiencing in amenity kit? How did they make it through the airline, through the airport to be on that airline, and how do they feel, right? We're moving away from recovery, moving into innovation. It seems like a really exciting time for the industry. So I'm looking forward to seeing you all in Hamburg. And thank you again for being here on the panel. And thank you to the viewers who are watching at a later date. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you all.
Stephanie. Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye.
See you in Hamburg.